Thank you so much for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. I'm grateful for your time. I know I always say that at the beginning of my podcast, and sometimes it gets a little redundant, but I really am grateful for your time, and I'm really appreciative that you not only spend it with me, but even more so if you'd share this interview, this podcast with somebody that you might think could benefit from this information. Today's podcast is no different. Today's episode, if you're watching it on Rumble, you'll get to see not only my guest, but see some links that are down below. And if you do share it, I think not only will other people benefit from it, but I think our country will benefit from this information. And that is my true intention with me today in this episode is Sheriff Mack. Sheriff, how are you doing today, my friend?
Doing really well, William Wallace. It's good to be with you, and I have to tell you, of course, I love your name because that's my favorite movie of all time, Braveheart. And absolutely, Braveheart really portrays a lot of principles that are wrong with government today and throughout human history. What governments have done, and the one man that stood up and said, "No more. We're free men, and free men we ought to be." And I absolutely love the principles portrayed in that movie. It's excellent. It was very well done. And my hat's off to Mel Gibson for putting that out about what, 30 years ago.
Yeah, was it that long ago?
I think it came out in 1995.
Wow. Gee, don't remind me how old I'm getting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or how old the real William Wallace is. But a lot of people tell me that I should paint my face blue when I do my shows or wear a kilt, but the kilt would be down below the waist. You wouldn't see that. But painting my face blue for an episode in today's time, people might think that I mean something different by that than what William Wallace meant.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't recommend that. Maybe one time for a special occasion or something, but
I have to consider that sometime, Sheriff. Yeah. Well, I meant to bring up too that today's show is brought to us and brought to everybody else by Patriot Mobile. Patriot Mobile not only supports veterans and our Constitution, which we're going to be talking about in this episode, Sheriff, a lot of constitutional values that the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association supports. So does Patriot Mobile. And people go to patriotmobile.com/WWFA, they'll get a free month over there. And they also support your efforts too, Sheriff. The Sheriff's Associations too. So
yeah, and boy, we've got a lot of work to do, and we really love the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association because, first of all, it invites and it survives the involvement of the American people, and that's exactly what the Founding Fathers intended. We have to be involved. It wasn't a mistake or a coincidence or happen chance that the first three words of the Constitution are "we the people," and we the people bestow and authorize and delegate all political power and authority. And when we realize that and understand that our involvement is absolutely essential to the preservation of our God-given rights and of our constitutional republic, then we're getting somewhere because our solution is both extremely principle based and constitutionally based. And it is the attempt that we are dedicated to make sure that the God-given rights that we were all blessed with is part of the preservation movement of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. And just to add to that, I want everyone to understand, listening to this program and participating with us today, that you understand that we have to be involved and that this organization, this association, is one of the most peaceful and effective solutions that we have. And the American people have now got to focus on peaceful and effective solutions. Be solution oriented. And that's what we offer to each of you. We're basically offering that to you on a silver platter. It's easy to become a member of our association, and it's easy to become a part of what we're doing because it's what you are doing.
Sheriff, I love that introduction, and I'm going to make it real. I want to help make it real succinct for the people, for our audience.
Mhm.
What exactly does the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association do? And then I want you to explain what gives them authority, because I love the peaceful solution, and that's what I always bring people on for. Is I'm always trying to inform people what we can do peacefully to be more involved. I get tired of hearing the narratives on the right as much as I get tired of hearing the narratives on the left that I believe continually divide us up into parties and ideologies instead of bringing people together on solutions. And then there's a lot of organizations that, while they say they're solution based, they're more ideologically founded, and they tend to get more sounding like a conspiracy organization that goes after on the attack instead of truly trying to get solutions. Without going down those multiple rabbit holes, I want you to explain what you all do. I know you do it very succinctly, and then where in the Constitution you all get that authority, and then we're going to talk about some of the things that y'all are working on. I'll let you go from there.
Okay, well, thank you. First of all, we are dedicated. My wife and I, and the other volunteers we have, and the CEO Sam Bushman for our organization, we're all dedicated to this. We've dedicated our lives to it because we've seen from the sheriffs of this country the last 30, 40, 50 years how essential it is to liberty to make sure that each of us has a place to turn for peace, safety, protection, and liberty. And that's what your sheriff should be bringing to the table. He is the ultimate protector of the people, and that's historical fact. He's the oldest elected law enforcement officer in this country. It goes back, the office of sheriff goes back over 1,000 years, an old Anglo-Saxon law. The sheriff of Nottingham in the Robin Hood story. That portrays something that is really horrible. If you have an evil, corrupt sheriff, then you've got real serious problems. But we, the people, have the alternative and the prerogative to elect and or appoint through the election process, appoint a sheriff who is a good person, who is of good, strong moral character, who will be the protector of the people, the conservator of the peace. In the Delaware Constitution, it actually specifically names the office of sheriff. That was the first state in the Union. And in the Constitution of Delaware, it says the sheriff is the conservator of the peace. That's not mentioned in the U.S. Constitution, but it is in several state legislatures have codified the office of sheriff. And in the Delaware Constitution, it's specifically, that is a word-for-word quote, he is the, quote, conservator of the peace. And you have got to have an honorable person, male or female, I don't care, who is of strong moral character and is dedicated to keeping his oath. Remember the oath, and make sure that you're electing someone who will do that and who will keep their oath, because that is significant in preserving the peace in your county. He is the ultimate. George Washington. Thomas Jefferson said that the sheriff is the top executive of every county. And when you take executive and you change it to executor of the law, he is the executor of the law, the ultimate protector of the people, and the conservator of the peace. In the U.S. Constitution is exactly where we go also with Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution. And it mentions all public officials in the state, in the federal government, in the United States and of the several states, shall swear an oath of allegiance to the Constitution. So that is the vital part of that. The question is, are you electing someone who will keep his oath? Remember the oath and remember the principles upon which America was founded. That is essential to all of this. And then it specifically mentions in my Supreme Court case, I was the first and basically the only time in U.S. history where sheriffs sued the federal government, the Clinton administration, no less. We sued the Clintons. We took it all the way to the Supreme Court, and we won, and we lived to tell about it. There were 7 sheriffs that did this. I started the whole thing back in 1994, and it was against the Brady Bill. And the Brady Bill was the first time in history that commandeered the office of sheriff to enforce federal law. We are not federal officers. There's very little federal statutes that sheriffs are required to enforce, that the states are required to enforce. In fact, it's almost non-existent. They can voluntarily work with them, and they can help enforce some federal laws. But basically, the only federal law that we are really tied to is the Constitution itself. And the states and the federal government agreed that there would be a foundation for all of us, and that foundation is the U.S. Constitution. And so the question is, does your sheriff know and understand his oath of office and his role in preserving our God-given republic? And so that is essential to all of this. And so one other point there. The sheriff is reviewed by the people every 4 years as to whether or not they will continue to keep him or put somebody else in that is better qualified.
So is the Constitutional Sheriff's Office, Sheriffs and Peace Office of America, is it a subset of the sheriffs in America, or is it kind of like a different membership? Are all sheriffs a member of your organization?
No,
I guess if they choose to, or just the ones that want to be strict constitutionalists? I mean, are you all a subset, or are you a completely different organization? How is that working with sheriffs around the country?
Well, there's lots of different sheriff organizations because each state has their own sheriff's association within the state. Right. And they don't all have to belong to that. In fact, in just about every state, there's there's a few sheriffs that don't want to be part of that. The National Sheriff's Association, which really provides up-to-date technology and training, but they don't do anything with the Constitution. And I saw all of this happening when I was sheriff, and I said, man, we need a national organization that actually focuses on that. But I was so busy with the full-time job as sheriff, and then also suing the Clinton administration, which was another full-time job, right? That I just had so many irons in the fire. I didn't form the national organization until 2011, almost 15 years after I left the sheriff's office. But it was really born out of the lawsuit, and every single person in this country, every person listening to this, should get a copy of this review of the case. And I put this together. I studied the case over and over because Antonin Scalia wrote the decision, and it went 10 times broader and more powerful than I ever dreamed. And this was a dream come true. Because first of all, I never thought we would get to the Supreme Court. And I never thought, even after that, I thought winning. They only take 1% of all the cases that cross their desk. So this was an absolute miracle. And the victory was even more miraculous. It was a 5-4 split. The 5 Republicans sided with me. The 4 Democrats sided with Clinton. And that bothers me to this day because it shouldn't be a political issue. And the appointments now in the Supreme Court are far too political and not constitutional. And so I said there has to be a national movement to create a focus on the Constitution. And that's why I did this. Why? Because it protects the rights of the people. The purpose of this organization was to get sheriffs and local officials and cops all educated, yes, because you can't do this in ignorance. You've got to be educated. But the ultimate goal is to protect the rights of the people. And if your sheriff and your peace officers that serve in your community do not know what your rights are, how are they going to know what to protect? They don't even know that we're not a democracy, let alone know and understand the rights detailed in the Bill of Rights. and what the
So your
purpose of the Bill of
organization,
Rights was.
so your organization really focuses on sheriffs that want to be more constitutionally involved as sheriffs that want
And all of them should be. All of
right.
them should.
All of them should be right. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
But your organization says to the sheriffs around the country, hey, and this is going to be a segue into my next question. So I'm asking for the
Mhm.
audience to pay attention here. So your organization says to all the sheriffs, for all of those sheriffs who want to focus on our Constitution and the original intent of the sheriffs to bring power closer to the people in their own communities. This is an organization for those constitutionally minded sheriffs to be a member of. Granted, you'd like all of them to be a member of you, but and so just yes or no, this organization focuses on the ones who just want to be constitutionalists. Is that correct?
Yes, but
Okay.
we're not really concerned about them becoming members. We're concerned about the citizens becoming members, and we want the citizens to work with them. Now, a lot of sheriffs have joined, but that's not a push. We don't want the sheriffs to go, oh, well, Mac, that's all he wants is my money, because it is a membership
Right.
that has dues, but they're only $11 a month. And so we want the American people to provide that. And we want sheriffs to focus on being constitutional. That is our biggest goal and focus with sheriffs.
So your organization is bottom up. It's saying to the people, hey,
Yeah,
you have more power in the sheriff's process than you realize. We want you to be involved to get your local sheriffs
there you go.
involved. So and we're going to show you all how to have more communication for the safety of your communities and for your constitutional rights to be
Exactly.
respected more. Okay. Now, the question I was leading into is, so now, but what I'm finding is, and what I'm seeing around our country is that the sheriffs around the country become more law enforcement oriented, and the people themselves not realizing that they have more constitutional power in the system than they realize tend to abdicate, if you will, their rights and their authority to a law enforcement agency. Now, I'm not at all saying that we should not respect the police. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying is that some law enforcement agencies become more, here's the law, and go after the people. Go after the people, instead of working with the community on constitutional rights. Am I seeing a break there? We were talking about this earlier. Am I seeing a break there, or or is this just the way it's supposed to be in the natural progression of our country? You tell me.
No, we believe that law enforcement is part of the sheriff's duties. There's no question about that. But which law? And the rule of law and the supreme law of the land is the United States Constitution. For instance, most police and sheriff's organizations are associated with traffic tickets, traffic citations. That's what cops are doing out there. Most people, when they're driving, are very scared of the police officer hiding behind the bushes so he can pull his radar gun and start issuing tickets. We're very much against that. Most of the tickets, look, I used to do it. I was a patrol officer. I wrote tickets for 5 years. Okay. And I started just feeling guilty about it. And after about 3 years of it, I had a real epiphany while I was writing a lady a ticket. And I realized that this poor woman didn't mean to run the stop sign. She had about 5 or 6 kids in her car that were just looking like the Tasmanian devil. She had no intention of running that stop sign. She hurt no one. She threatened no one. And so why am I gouging her with a traffic citation that she could not afford and that her kids would need? That it was obvious this was a very poor family. But heck, Poor families getting wrecked just like rich families. And do we just cite the rich people who can afford it? No, it needs to be equitable for everyone. But the problem is, I came up with the term taxation through citation. And it's just another tax, and it's just another way for government to subversively take more money from the people. And they want it. And traffic citations, just radar tickets alone, bring in $9 billion a year. And there's other police officers, former police officers, that have written books about this, just like I have. And it's immoral. It's wrong. There is no threat. There is no reason to give this lady a ticket. If I'm really a public servant, if I had been that way and trained that way, I would have said, ma'am, look, there's a school right here. It's after hours, but it's open. Why don't you take your kids over there for a few minutes and let them get some of this energy out, and just realize that when you're trying to settle your kids down, pull over. And this was a nice area where she could have done that very easily. Pull over and settle them down. And like I say, go over to the school a little for a few minutes. I don't know if you have an appointment, but maybe you could just spend a few minutes with your kids, let them enjoy the outdoors and let them play for a minute, and then be on your way. You see, that's the difference between a statutory enforcement corporate officer and a true public servant. And that's where we need to go with all of this. We need to be there to protect and serve. The 4 words for our motto is uphold, defend, protect, and serve. That's the motto for the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA. And we want everyone to go to our website, become a member of our posse so that we can train you to help and work with your sheriff. And we do it every Wednesday. In fact, we have it today. It's today.
I love it. I've been playing your website. I've been scrolling your website at the bottom, but for the podcast listeners, it's with www.cpsoa.org.
No, CSPOA. CSPOA.org.
CSPOA.org. Got it. Yeah. So I'll scroll it again here in just a minute on the Rumble channel. So go ahead.
Let me just make sure one other thing though. Law and order is not sacrificed here. We just want law enforcement to put focus on the civil rights of every individual, that we're here to protect their God-given rights, their civil rights. And if that becomes our focus, law enforcement across the country is going to change its attitude towards how they deal with the public. And I'm not saying all tickets are bad or unconstitutional. Most of them are. Most of them are unconstitutional. They violate the 8th Amendment. No excessive fines or bail. And that's the 8th Amendment. And obviously, traffic tickets are excessive in the amount and the frequency that they're written and issued. And also the amount of the fines are excessive. There's some non-moving violations that are $500 to $700 in some states, Arizona included. And so it needs to be that it's reasonable and that it does not violate the law, and that we, law enforcement, don't become revenue agents, but true protectors and servants of the people.
You know, on my show, I have I have people that are somewhat conservative minded. I have people that are liberal minded. And I try to break away from the narratives, even though it kind of ekes out a little bit sometimes. But I truly believe that conservative values, which tend to be labeled, kind of a right-leaning value, I believe still the conservative values are really what are more constitutional, more productive.
We're nonpartisan. And we don't care. It's not left or right. It's right or wrong. And that's where we're focusing.
Well, you're picking up on where I'm going with this next question, because my next question is going to be something that may sound more liberal in some ways. Do you think that much of law enforcement in general, and even some sheriff's organizations nationwide, have lost sight of people's civil rights and their constitutional rights instead, or let me ask it this way: they've lost vision of their constitutional rights and their civil rights, and replace that with just the rule of the law of the land. Here's the law. Here's a chance for me to impose a fine. Here's a chance for me to put you in jail and lock you up and make money off of it. Have they kind of lost that constitutional connection of civil rights to just go to law enforcement? Am I seeing that properly here? And then the next part of that would be, so your organization tries to bridge that gap, but I'll let you answer both those questions.
Well, that's exactly correct. Yeah, it's a huge gap. When you see videos and there's an officer going, because I said so. Well, officer, do you know and understand the law? I am the law. What I say goes. And I gave you a lawful order, and if you don't obey it, then I'm arresting you. Oh, okay. Well, officer, would you consider this? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not trespassing anywhere. I'm on a public sidewalk. This is where the public gets to go. And you're violating my rights. And so, okay, that's it. You're going to jail. That is absurd. And I've seen that happen. I've seen exactly that happen. And we cannot, in law enforcement, we cannot afford to have pride fights with the citizens for whom we work and to whom we offer safety and protection. We can't become part of the problem like that. There is no way, folks. And this is why we offer the training that we do nationwide. Today, I'm having a phone call with an assistant chief in Hawaii. And they don't have sheriffs there. There's 3 states that don't have sheriffs, elected sheriffs. And that's Hawaii, and Alaska, and Connecticut. Connecticut voted the office out. Connecticut had sheriffs for hundreds of years. But for some crazy reason, the political atmosphere there turned on the office of sheriff, and they voted it out. And there's only state police and chiefs of police and police. And those are all bureaucrats. We want a sheriff who is a public servant. And in America, in our republic, a republic means that the citizens, the people, choose their representatives in all forms of government. And that includes law enforcement. We the people choose who is our sheriff. And this goes
back to what I like about your organization. It's a bottom-up approach where the people, are more involved, and the people are reminding the sheriffs, hey, we have constitutional rights, but it's being done in a way that has respect for the law, in a way that respect gets returned back to the people, and that community effort in a positive way that you're explaining that your organization does is what connects the two in a way that we have a more prosperous community and a safer community. Is that a correct way of looking at this?
Yeah, let me illustrate it with a story that I call the tale of 2 sheriffs.
Okay.
So first of all, during COVID, we had a great many sheriffs that stood against enforcing the COVID mandates. In fact, none of those mandates were ever made into legislation. So there was really no laws requiring people to wear a mask. They were all just dictatorial mandates, and some went along with them. And then the force of government of firing people if they didn't get vaxxed. Absolutely absurd. And guess who's winning all the lawsuits now against that? Who's getting all their jobs back, all their back pay,
right?
Coming back. So the tale of 2 sheriffs. We had Sheriff Chronister in Florida, who actually arrested a pastor. Rodney Howard Brown was arrested for having church service. And they made a mandate saying, no church. Well, this good pastor, and I've met him. I've been out to Florida, and I've had lunch with him. And he said, I cannot obey such a mandate. First, it's not a law, but secondly, even if it were, Jesus Christ runs our church. He's the head of our church, not the government. He was arrested nevertheless, and the charges actually were dropped later, but he never got an apology from Sheriff Chronister. On the other hand, we had a sheriff in New Mexico, Sheriff Hamilton. Pastor Caleb Cooper came to him and he said, Sheriff, I'm not going to stop having church. Jesus Christ is in charge of our church, not the government. And said the same thing as Pastor Brown in Florida. And he says, I want to know what you're going to do to protect me and my congregation. Because the state of New Mexico had warned that any church having church services would be shut down and maybe arrested. So Sheriff Hamilton told Caleb Cooper, Pastor Cooper, if they come to shut you down, I will do everything in my power to stop it and to protect you and your parishioners. So here came the New Mexico State Police, and they came to shut them down. And the sheriff was there, and he told the police, he said, I have deputized every person in that church. They are now under my authority. They work with me. They are all volunteers and members of my posse. They are not shutting down. And Pastor Caleb Cooper is also a member of my posse. And they are having a meeting in there. I am part of this meeting. And this church will not shut down. The state police left. And Pastor Cooper kept his church open every Sunday, every minute of every meeting service scheduled. That is the difference between a constitutional sheriff and a go along to get along sheriff that doesn't know what he's doing. We would invite and have invited Sheriff Chronister to get educated. He has refused. He won't have anything to do with us. We have actually helped make sure that he did not get an appointment on the Trump new administration. He actually had an appointment to be DEA director. We got involved and stopped that because he's not a good man and he's not a good sheriff. He's not a good person. And so we're willing to stand against those. But Sheriff Hamilton, on the other hand, is a good man, did his job. And you know what happened? This was peaceful because he interposed himself for the people and for this good pastor. This is what we do at the CSPOA. And I want to ask every one of your members, audience, which one do you want in your county? I don't care if you're liberal, Democrat. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you are. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you belong to. I don't care what your nationality is. I want you to tell me, which sheriff do you want in your community? Sheriff Hamilton or Sheriff Chronister?
And that question, and the answer to that question should be the one that the people choose to be involved with peacefully, because it sounds to me, and we had a similar situation in Louisiana, by the way. Pastor Tony Spell outside of Baton Rouge here in Louisiana was arrested by state police. But it sounds to me like if the people are working in peaceful ways with their sheriffs through with respect to your organization, and they're doing it in that same respect for law enforcement with their sheriffs, they build those bridges before it gets to be a bad place, and that improves our community. But back to a question I had a minute ago but it sounds to me like there's still sheriffs around the country that have kind of abdicated their authority more to the rule of law instead of the Constitution. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Yeah, and we get into that because we watch too many television shows about police shows and John Wayne and Clint Eastwood and all the movies and whatnot, and I want to be like them, and it's really how people who want to become cops, it's really how they get that desire. And it's a lot of times it's just boring being a cop. And so cops just simply need to be trained appropriately, that we're public servants and that we're guards of the Constitution. And so when we change that and we shift that paradigm to true public service and protection, then we're going to change America with that. And ultimately, what if the IRS comes in to abuse you, victimize you, and bully you, which they've been doing now for 130 years in America?
Right.
Who's supposed to stop that? A good constitutional sheriff will interpose and intervene on your behalf to make sure that you're not victimized by other government bureaucrats who don't know the Constitution and don't know the real law of this country. And once we what if we had 1,000 sheriffs in this country doing that? There's 3,000 sheriffs in America, a little over. What if we had 1,000, 1,200, half, 1,500 sheriffs that were actually doing this and protecting people's rights and protecting people from abusive and tyrannical government?
Because our country has, how shall I say, it's becoming more acceptable, I guess, in our country to forget our constitutional rights and just bow to a growing government, which, like the example you talked about in Connecticut, where when you get rid of sheriffs associations, you basically take a bridge out of society that connects people, or which is supposed to connect people to their constitutional rights, and then it abdicates their rights to a federal bureaucracy. And what we've seen in our federal government, as we have let federal bureaucracy grow in our country, and we have let these bureaucratic agencies grow in our country, not only have we the people lost more of our rights, but government has gotten more rights and more control over us. And then they need the funding. So then then the national debt goes up. And it's as we, the people, have abdicated our rights, like I just now explained, we've watched government grow, our rights diminish, and our debt go up. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. Yeah. The debt now is 37 trillion. They act like it doesn't even matter.
Right.
If it doesn't matter, then why do they come after us so hard to collect taxes? Why don't they just add it to the national debt? They do that for every other purpose under the sun. They fund $800 million a year to Planned Parenthood, a private organization. So why can't we just keep our money instead of throwing it away on wasteful government spending and throwing it away on groups like Planned Parenthood? That's absolutely the most corrupt criminal spending of taxpayer dollars in the history of our country. But they still do it. And then they send the IRS out to get us because we don't pay our taxes. Why should we be paying taxes to such an immoral and corrupt system? No.
Well, that's because the people have allowed our politicians to control us with ideologies and narratives, and that's how we've lost our rights, as you've explained, in the Sheriff's Association process. And then it's how bureaucracy has grown so much, and as it grows and needs more of our money, they need more power to be able to control us with our money. It's a vicious cycle, and like you said, we need to take more of our power back. But what I like, some of the things that you all are working on, you talked about Planned Parenthood. I wouldn't associate anything with Planned Parenthood to do with your organization. What are you guys doing with Planned Parenthood?
Well, we think it should be the number one thing on the list for what the president should be doing now in his administration. They should be focusing on not DOGE. That would be the first thing to cut, would be Planned Parenthood. They provide no government service. They're not a government entity. And why are we paying money to them? Because evil politicians in Washington, D.C. steal our tax dollars, funnel it to Planned Parenthood, and then it gets worse. Planned Parenthood takes a lot of the donations and money that they receive and funnel it back to the very politicians that were funneling it to them in the first place. So the staunch supporters, the staunch politicians and congressmen and senators, get money from Planned Parenthood that actually comes indirectly from us, or no, directly from us. And so this kind of corruption should be the number one thing on the list. If we're really serious about DOGE, President Trump, we have got to get this evil organization defunded. If you know what, I'm not talking about stopping abortion. In fact, I don't believe we're ever going to stop abortion. I wish we could. I pray to God that we could, but we're not. It's not. There's too many facets of evil in this country that are not going to allow that. They'll keep doing it no matter what. However, we can stop the taxpayer funding to such an organization. Somebody wants to donate to Planned Parenthood, nobody can stop them. But forcing us to do that through taxpayer dollars, these are sacred funds. These are protected funds. And I have a national organization that protects civil rights. Why am I not funded by the federal government?
Right. I
You know?
agree with you 100% that Planned Parenthood should not be funded by the government because it offers no government services.
Correct.
And likewise, I also agree that the government should not be funding your organization, which
No, we
not
shouldn't.
because it's perceived as a right-wing organization, but because because you're, even though you're non-ideological and nonpartisan, it still shouldn't be, simply because it's not a government organization. But Planned Parenthood is just a microcosm of so many other examples of things that our government is funding for ideological purposes, wrapped with narratives to sell it to the American people for them to fund it with their tax dollars.
Right.
And like you said, it's one of the many things that should be undone. What else are you guys doing anything with the Federal Reserve? I mean, there's a lot of
Well,
talk.
that's on our list.
You mentioned
That's on our
IRS,
list.
and so you mentioned
Yeah.
IRS. I kind of figured that might go to the Federal Reserve also. Is there anything you're working on there?
I mean, well, look at what's come up lately. I mean, Jerome Powell refuses to do the right thing and lower interest rates. Who in the hell appointed him in charge of our money and interest rates? One man decides what the value of our money is and our
Right.
interest rates. Do you know how much the billions? Trump even said it, and he's absolutely correct. Taking interest rates down a point would save the American people billions and billions in loan fees. And Jerome Powell, no, I just don't think this is the time, And the Federal Reserve is not federal. They're made up of international banksters. And having a central bank is what the founding fathers warned us about. So we've created a central bank called the Federal Reserve. It's run by international banksters, and they have no obligation whatsoever to do anything that Congress or the president tell them. However, Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, I have it right here in my hand, and Article 1, Section 8 says that Congress shall coin money and regulate the value thereof. So who does that? Federal Reserve. And they have absolutely no allegiance to us. So we're putting it out, President Trump, please fire Jerome Powell and that other lady that's on the board. Fire all of them and put this back where it's supposed to be, and that's Congress. Congress abdicated this authority and power to the Federal Reserve back in 1913. It was absurd. And then the Federal Reserve creates this IRS collection agency, who is the most Gestapo-like organization that's ever existed. And they are based on intimidation and bullying. And both parties say they don't approve of bullies, yet they created an organization of bullies to go after the American people.
Just like they created the IRS, like you said, an organization of
abolish
bullies.
the IRS, abolish the Federal Reserve, and yes, President Trump has actually hinted at this more than 2 or 3 times. Get rid of the federal income tax.
And what's interesting to me is that, once again, just like Planned Parenthood, the the need for the Federal Reserve, the need for the IRS, the need for federal income taxes has been wrapped with narratives that make the people feel like they need that to be able to get the benefits that government hands back out. the people don't need the benefits. They certainly don't need the government giving them the benefits, because
No,
without the two, the people could keep the money and control their own benefits along with their own freedoms. I'm going to
exactly.
pivot a
Now,
little
now,
bit more
now,
because I
no,
know we
wait,
only
wait,
have a
wait,
few.
wait, wait, wait. You just touched on something. Their own freedom. Folks, in this country or in this world, but let's focus on America. Do we have the right to enjoy and control the fruit of our labor? No, we don't. You hear politicians say every day, oh, we're going to lower taxes so the American people can keep more of their money. That's right. It's the fruit of my labor, not yours. It doesn't belong to government and it doesn't belong to my neighbors. It belongs to me. No, I am not selfish and I donate to many things, but it cannot be forced by government that I donate to a church or donate to somebody's health issue or donations and charity come from the heart, and forced charity is tyranny, and that's what we have today.
I agree 100%. I know we only have probably another 5-7 minutes here before we got to get you on to your next interview, because I know you're a busy man. You're out there talking about constitutional rights on more platforms than mine, and I appreciate that you're doing that and working so hard. And I'm going to let everybody know that you're going to be back soon. But before that time comes, I have a few more questions for you. Are you guys I mean, like, obviously you're working on some hot topics. You're working on Federal Reserve, IRS, Planned Parenthood,
Yeah.
all the narratives that keep us from our constitutional rights. What about illegal immigration? Is there anything that you guys are
Oh
doing?
yeah, that was our first big one. Yeah,
Oh, is it? Is it? Well, let's talk
we
about
put
that
it
for a
out to
second.
all sheriffs that they should be helping with deportation. But just so
Say
you
that
know,
again.
we put it out to all of our lists, all of our sheriffs, everybody, even sheriffs who have nothing to do with us. We put it out to all of them that they should be helping with deportation. However, there's a key component here. The sheriff cannot be forced to. And a sheriff, it's up to the sheriff whether he helps with that. It's up to the sheriff and his people. It's not up to the government. Tom Homan knows that. He and I have talked, and he knows that. They can't interfere with what the federal government is doing. This is a federal issue. Okay? Protecting our borders and naturalization is a federal authority. Okay? So you cannot interfere, just like the stupid judge in Wisconsin got arrested for interfering. That was a legitimate charge. She did. And yes, she deserves her due process and to go to court. And I can't, and I'm sure, if she gets a liberal judge, they'll probably say, oh no, that's, or she gets a liberal jury. But
Right.
folks, the sheriff is independent. He works only for you, and he cannot be forced to do it one way or the other. Oh, and that's the thing we're working on. We're planning a conference in Washington State. We're raising money for that. We need donations desperately so that we can have this, because this conference we're planning to have in Washington State, we're going into the belly of the beast, because Washington State is the worst state in the union for attacking the office of sheriff. They stole the stewardship of the sheriff of the people to elect their own sheriffs in King County, Washington. They appoint the sheriff there now. He's not elected. He's not chosen by the people. He's chosen by a bunch of other bureaucrats.
Getting them one step closer to where Alaska and Hawaii is, and where Connecticut now is, correct?
Yep. Yes, that's it. And folks, we are here to protect the office of sheriff, because he is here to protect you. And we need this meeting, and we need to pay for this meeting. And folks, whatever donation you can give, we absolutely need your help.
Two more quick things to bring up before I ask you the final question of the show. But there's a Supreme Court ruling that you guys were involved in.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right about that? You and last name of Prince, maybe? Am I getting that right?
Sheriff Prince from Montana and I were the two that ended up at the Supreme Court in December of 1996. The decision came out June of 1997.
That was at the Brady bill that you mentioned earlier, right?
Correct.
Got it. And what about the organization? Let's walk out a little bit on the organization of the Constitutional Sheriff and Police Officers Police Officers Association. It's a tongue twister there, Sheriff
Yeah,
Mack.
it is.
You know, is there anything that you want to say before I ask my final question about your organization to really help circle back around on getting people involved?
Well, that's the whole thing. We depend on funding from our dues and the memberships, and again, that's $11 a month. Join us, be part of it. It's not a contract. You can quit anytime if you don't like what we're doing, but I guarantee you, you will, because this is just about the only peaceful and effective solution we have left. Look at all the people where they send money and the donations they make. There is no more deserving organization on the face of the planet than this one that protects and defends your God-given rights. The solution, my dear friends, is not if we go forward. That's misused way too much. It's a political talking point. The solution is behind us. It's in our foundation. It's in our history. It's in Independence Hall. It's in the principles espoused by the founding fathers. If we return to that, we will save America. That's what we're about, because if America dies, freedom dies with it. Your personal and individual liberty dies with it. We want to preserve America. We want to protect your civil rights. And we want to make America what it was supposed to be in the first place. A land of the free, home of the brave, and justice for all. We really believe in that. And so, folks, join us in this holy cause of liberty. You'll see that it really does work. I gave you the story of the tale of two sheriffs. There's lots more. And we want you involved in this process. Without you, America fails.
Sheriff Mack, that was awesome. I absolutely love it. And while I'd love to end on that note, I'm going to end on my final question I ask everybody on my show, which is, where do you think we are losing freedom in America?
We can take it back county by county, and that's where we're losing it, is that we don't have enough officials in every county that believe this and know this and understand it. Most of them are good people. We just need to put the right information in front of the right people. If we do, they'll do the right thing.
So reminding them of the people's constitutional rights while getting the people involved, it's almost like our election process. I believe that most of our problems in our communities and states and country could be simply solved if people got out and voted on a regular basis on every
Yeah, not just voting. Get involved. Get involved more than voting. It can't just be voting, but folks, it doesn't take a lot of time to do this. Okay, it really doesn't. So get
Sheriff
involved.
Mack,
do a little more.
Sheriff Mack, thank you so much. Hold on one second while I sign out here and let everybody, please share the show, share this episode. I believe it is not only a positive way to be involved, but almost a must-do way to be involved to protect our constitutional rights and be peaceful with our police, our law enforcement, as a way to protect our constitutional rights. Thank you so much, and please check out Patriot Mobile on the way out. Have a great day.